Hello, in today's video we'll be replacing the window motor regulator assembly on this 2002 Chevy Avalanche. This process will be the same, if not similar, to other Chevy GMC Cadillac trucks of similar years. So the first thing I'm going to do is secure the glass. Since we will be separating it from the assembly, and since it's up most of the way, we'll want to hold it there. So to do this, we can use some of these window holders, used for this purpose. Or you can use tape, which if you do, I prefer painter's tape, since you don't want it to stick to your vehicle's paint as you go above the door and onto the backside of the glass. When using tape, you want to be sure that it sticks and holds onto a good amount of glass surface so it gets a good hold. To begin removal, we'll want to pull off the side mirror cover, which is held on by two clips, followed by this panel with the door lock and window switches. Just pull it up and off, and this one's also held on by two clips. Now we'll want to disconnect these connectors by pressing down on the tabs to disengage them. And this is the tab that we'll want to be pressing down as we slide off the connector. And same goes for this one. For this next one, I find it easier to use a flathead screwdriver to push in the tab as you slide it down enough to pass it through the retaining portion. Now pull off this door handle cover and maneuver it around the handle. Pop out this cover for the door lock rod. I'm using a screwdriver, but it's better to use one of those plastic door panel tools. They're safer on interior parts. Using a 7mm socket, we'll have two screws to remove. One here under the window switch panel. I'm using it with an extension to make it easier to reach. And here we got our first. Now for the second, located just below the pull handle. It's got this screw down here on the bottom of the door panel, and even though it doesn't attach the door panel to the door, it's always good practice to look around the door and remove any screws that may be possibly holding it. Now with all the screws removed, let's pull up the door panel, but it'll still have some connections to remove, so don't pull it off just yet. Let's disconnect this tweeter connector by pressing in on this tab, followed by the door panel light. This one just pull and wiggle it off. Now with those off, we can remove the door panel completely. At this point, we'll want to slide back the vapor barrier just enough so we can access the window regulator bolts, folding this one about this far forward. And now for this front portion, back to about this point. Now to separate the side glass from the regulator, which is attached by two clamps. Here's one of them, but unfortunately since it's somewhat lowered, you can't really use a socket straight across. So for this rear one, I'll be using a 10mm ratcheting wrench, which you can access from below, but you'll just want to loosen it a few turns. This front clamp we can access with a socket, so using a 10mm socket, loosen this one a few turns. And with both of them loose, I just push the clamps down and off the glass. Or you can also push the glass upward and off the clamps if yours isn't busted like this one. And let's now disconnect the window motor connection, pressing in on the tab and sliding off the connector. Now finally, let's remove the window regulator hold down bolts. There will be 3 bolts here up front that we'll need to remove using a 10mm socket. The front part of the regulator will still be hooked on up here for now. Now for the rear part of the regulator, we got 3 bolts to remove here as well, using the same 10mm socket. With all the bolts removed, let's unhook and bring down the rear part of the regulator, followed by the front, and we can just lay it down here inside the door. Well, let's now get the regulator out completely using this rear opening on the door. starting with the rear part of the regulator first. Followed by the front portion, maneuvering it out as you do. And with that, our window regulator assembly is out. And here you can see how damaged the old regulator was. As you can see, the cable's all tangled up. Some of the ends on the cable are broken. And the clamps holding up the glass pretty much just fell off. Now for our new regulator assembly, before installing this one, we'll want to loosen the clamps slightly so that the glass can slide into the clamps when it's installed. And now for the installation, we'll want to slide it in the same way that we removed it. Install the front portion first, and once you got it in, pull it through the front part of the door. Doing this will help install the rear portion. And now let's get the rear part in. And with the window regulator inside the door, let's hang it in place. Followed by the front part. Now with it in position and confirming that everything lines up, let's install the bolts. Get them started by hand first and then use a tool to tighten them. And once again, there will be 3 bolts here up front, and 3 on the rear. And let's now go ahead and tighten them all. And whenever I use an electric tool, I always go over them with a hand tool. It helps me feel more comfortable with how well they're tightened. Let's now reconnect the window motor. And at this point, I'll also reconnect the window switches so I can guide the regulator assembly onto the glass. For it to work though, we'll want to turn the key to the on position. Here you'll want to be careful. I slowly tap the switch, making sure that the glass guides itself onto the clamps. And once you confirm they lined up, you can put the glass all the way up, so you can use a ratchet with the 10mm to tighten the clamps that'll hold the glass. Now with both clamps tight, let's reinstall everything else. The vapor barrier, also making sure that you pull all the connectors that you'll still need through. Reconnect the door panel light, followed by the tweeter. Now hook on the door panel, making sure that it hooks in all around. If it's fully seated, and on properly, the screw holes should line up. And if your tabs came off of your switch panel, you'll want to remove them from the door panel and place them back onto the switch panel. To get them off, just push in on the tab from inside the door panel to disengage them. Once you get them off, slide them back onto the switch panel like so. Let's now reinstall and tighten all the door panel screws. Followed by the second one, and this third one if you decided to remove it. This door handle cover, you'll want to get the front part in first and then clip on the back. Now clip back on this door lock rod cover. And make sure that it operates. Now reconnect the connectors. And reinstall the switch panel. And finally this last cover. And now confirm it works good. And with that, our video is done. I hope you found it helpful and informative. If so, please click that thumbs up button to support my video and my channel. And please subscribe if you haven't done so.